Hi, Diana Sescalini here for Managerial Accounting. So we're going to be doing this as Chapter 4 or Chapter 18, depending on which version of the book you have. So it's either Managerial Accounting or it's Accounting 1B. Let me park myself up here in the corner so we can start talking about the slides. So we're going to be talking Chapter 4 or Chapter 18 is called Activity-Based Costing. And every chapter we do in here is really just showing you different methods of how to cost my product. Because the whole thing that we're concerned about here, oops, sorry about that, didn't mean to go forward on that, is what is my product cost? And we already know that it's DM, DL, and factory overhead, but we have to decide what methods we're going to use to actually cost the product to allocate it down to the actual cost. So here's allocation of factory overhead cost. So here's my factory overhead. I'm going to allocate it, and we're going to look at 3 different types of allocation methods in this chapter. The first one we're going to be looking at is called a single plant-wide. The second one is going to be called multiple production department. And finally, we're going to be looking at activity-based costing. So each 3 will be a different method of allocating my cost. Now, obviously, and you'll find out in a little bit, that remember we talked about in a previous chapter, predetermined factory overhead rates? If we're using that, we're either going to do one of these 3, the single, the multiple production, and the activity-based. And it does matter which one we choose because it has a lot to do with how the product cost is. And I'm going to show you an example. We're going to make one thing all the way through. I'm sorry, 2 different things all the way through, looking at all 3 of these actual different methods, and we'll see which one is really the most efficient. So here we go. We're going to start with single plant-wide rate first. We are Ruse Company, and we make snowmobiles and riding mowers. And so far, and we're going to do it and we do it in a single factory. So we've got this much information. We've got a 1.6 million budgeted for factory overhead for the year, for the whole factory, and 20,000 budgeted direct labor hours. And here's how it breaks down. We're going to make 1,000 snowmobiles and 1,000 riding motors. Sorry about that. Anyway, so we're going to make 1,000 of each, and each requires 10 direct labor hours. So my budgeted direct labor hours of 20,000 this is how I actually got it. So we're going to do single wide. So under the single wide, we're going to use this formula right here. Single, to find out what the actual rate is for single, we're going to take total factory overhead budgeted divided by total plant-wide allocation base. Okay, and so we've talked about this in a previous chapter, that the way we allocate things is through direct labor hours. Oops, sorry. I don't know what happened to my little pointer there. Direct labor hours, direct labor dollars, or machine hours. And labor hours and machine hours are the most popular. So here we go. So we had 1.6 million in factory overhead divided by the 20,000, and that means it's going to be $80 per direct labor hour. So we're going to take this rate and apply it back to my to the screen we looked at previously. Okay, I found my little pointer. I was looking for it. So here we go. 1.6 million, that's my factory overhead, divided by my total budgeted direct labor hours, $80 an hour. So as we move on, we already talked about each of the 2 products I make. Snowmobiles, $80 times the 10 direct labor hours, and $80 times the 10 direct labor hours. So the factory overhead cost per unit is going to be $800 on this. And so it kind of looks like this. This makes sense because it takes 10 direct labor hours for each one. I've got an $80 rate. That's what it looks like. So the biggest advantage to this method is that it's very simple, inexpensive to use, but the problem is it makes the assumption that all factory overhead costs are done in the same way by all products. Now that's not necessarily going to be the truth, and we're going to see that in video 2 when we take a look at the other allocation methods. So this concludes video 1 of chapter 4, 8, or 18.